What's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to talk about some Bitcoin news, what's been going on with the spot Bitcoin ETFs, also Ethereum ETFs. We do have Nvda earnings coming up. That's definitely going to be big for the market. We also have PCE coming up, and we'll just go into kind of what's been going on in the market lately, what's been going on with Bitcoin. But let's get right into it. If you guys get something useful out of this, make sure you like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and let's get started. And first off, many of you know we just had the Jackson Hole speech, and Jerome Powell was no doubt setting up the market for rate cuts in September. We already expected it. The market is already expecting either a 0.5% or a 0.25% interest rate cut. But after this meeting, it did push the odds slightly more towards a 0.5 or a 50 basis point cut, but the market still is overall expecting a 25 basis point cut or a 0.25% cut. But Powell has said things like, with an appropriate dialing back of policy restraint, there's good reason to think that the economy will get back to 2% inflation while maintaining a strong labor market. The direction of travel is clear. You'll notice the attention is kind of shifting away from inflation and more towards the labor market, especially with this recent revision of new jobs for the year. We had something like an 800,000 job decrease, a revision to the downside. And here's the Fed again saying, we do not seek or welcome further cooling in labor market conditions. See how the narrative is shifting. Adding the Fed will do everything we can to support a strong labor market. This is a hint that the central bank will be aggressive in rate cuts moving forwards. Now, I do have some important upcoming dates for you guys. First off is going to be PCE, and this is going to release on August 30th. Basically, we have been in the 2.5% range. It would be nice to see this come in finally under 2.5%, get into the low twos. That would be a great sign. But you'll see that it has cooled down dramatically from the 2022s, all the way up nearly to 7%. Now down pretty consistently into the mid 2 area. But I do believe we will see this in the low 2s very soon. And next, moving into September 11 is going to be CPI. The previous read was a 2.9. We finally got under the 3s here. What'll be important is to see this come down and not go up. Or at the worst, just keep the level it's at, keep that 2.9%. It would be very shocking to the market if we see CPI, PPI, PCE all coming in higher from the previous month. That would be a bad sign, and that might decrease the odds of a rate cut. But I do think regardless, we are getting the rate cuts. And as the Fed has said, policy is restrictive enough. Even with starting to lower these rates, getting the ball rolling, we still do have high rates, even with the first rate cut, second rate cut, third rate cut. The federal funds rate is still quite high. And after CPI is going to be PPI. This is going to be September 12th. And their previous read was a 2.2%. There was actually a time that this nearly became deflationary. This nearly went under 0%. The previous read was a 2.2%. You can see that it has came down pretty nicely in recent months. One thing you'll see is they do change this quite often. There are revisions to the downside, like here in this the December of 2023. There are revisions to the upside and to the downside. The trajectory is definitely downwards in terms of CPI, PPI, PCE. Now, the Fed's next focus is going to be maintaining the labor market while cutting these rates, while hopefully balancing inflation and seeing it still come down. Will the soft landing be achieved? Who knows? And like I said, Nvda is reporting earnings. This is going to be after the close on Wednesday. Everyone will be watching this in the market. If Nvda somehow misses terribly, that'd be a very bad sign. But the positive is more often than not, they do beat earnings estimates in terms of EPS and revenue. We'll see if that happens here in the upcoming earnings after the close on Wednesday. And as a side note, I definitely want to focus more on, larger caps, other types of stocks rather than just Bitcoin mining stocks, Bitcoin proxies, because as we get into 2025, as we get into specifically mid and late 2025, to me, that will be the time to take considerable amount of profits and start moving out of the Bitcoin proxies and into mega caps, value stocks, dividend stocks. We will definitely be shifting the focus later in the cycle, maybe even going short on a few of the Bitcoin miners that I don't like. But let's move on. Spot Bitcoin ETFs see the highest single inflow day since July, and this continues the 7-day streak. However, Ethereum isn't faring as well. Look at this, $252 million worth of inflows on Friday. And this continues the 7-day inflow streak. And this is also the highest single day value in 1 month. However, Ethereum hasn't been doing as well, like I said. We have 7 consecutive days of outflows. Here's the big picture. These inflows, at least in terms of Bitcoin right now, will continue to happen. Bitcoin just hit a new record. $58 billion is the value in these ETFs, the net inflows, the money in these. We're talking about Grayscale, we're talking about IBIT, all of the other funds, $58 billion is in there. And in my opinion, it is going to get quickly surpassed. By the end of the year, we might see Grayscale selling considerably less, if not seeing more inflows from them. Things have definitely been positive recently. We're at our highest net inflow since 32 days. Grayscale logged an outflow of 35 million. It has been slowing down a bit. We have been in the hundreds of millions in terms of outflows in a matter of days sometimes. And now it's nice to see that they're in the, tens of millions. But I do want to see them start posting inflows. The OGs and the funds are exiting, finding better fees, finding funds with better fees. And soon Grayscale won't put as much selling pressure onto Bitcoin. But overall, even with Grayscale selling pressure, we are getting net inflows. That is the big picture. We are getting new records in terms of assets under management. Collectively, Bitcoin is almost at 60 billion in these spot Bitcoin ETFs that have only been starting since early January, with exception of GBTC. It's been rough for Ethereum. 7 days in a row of net outflows, which is basically the opposite of what we've been seeing with Bitcoin recently. But remember, there's usually a lag with the altcoins. When Bitcoin runs, typically you get a run from the alts later, especially once the hype really draws in, once there's excitement and euphoria. Right now, people are still like, is Bitcoin going to rally to new all-time highs here? Or is it just going to keep chopping around in this pattern it's been in? So there's a little uncertainty in the market. This little pop that we had to 64,000 definitely breathes a sigh of relief, gives us some optimism. But we could just as easily be back at 60,000 in the following week, although I doubt it. But look at this, because of the fluctuations in price of Ethereum, despite these outflows, the total net assets of these combined funds is at its highest level since August 2nd. Now I got one more thing I want to go over, and then we'll look at Bitcoin and Ethereum on the chart. But this trader who nailed the Bitcoin pre-halving correction says that Bitcoin's bargain period has ended. History has repeated, the downside deviation is over. The bargain buying period has ended. Bitcoin is on the cusp of confirming a reclaim of its weekly reaccumulation range. What a tongue twister. And you'll see in the last halving, the post-halving accumulation phase, and then the parabolic upside. We are approaching the parabolic upside according to this chart, and I will show you a couple other things that are very telling. But first, continuing on with this article, they're also pointing out our resistances on this descending channel. Once we break out, we are likely going to go on to a rally. Week 1 in the cross-channel ascent likely already underway, provided Bitcoin continues to stay above 61.5 going into the next weekly close, or the new weekly close. The uptrend has resumed. This analyst thinks that Bitcoin is now in a position to sustain its ascent after capitulating to as low as 48,000. We'll be very lucky if Bitcoin rejects from 71.5 again. They expect the break and they expect it to go parabolic. They're basically saying we'll be lucky if we continue this chop and it gives us more opportunities to buy. Time is ticking. You buy during the fear and you sell during the greed. It's hard to wrap your brain around. It's hard to get that psychology through. But if it's an asset you love, it's an asset you believe in, you definitely buy the fear. And in terms of monthly time frame, Bitcoin is now challenging the series of lower highs, this blue line here. Monthly close a little above current prices and Bitcoin would break this trend line resistance and the downtrend would be over, according to the monthly. Now I do want to quickly show you on my Discord some of the previous rallies that Bitcoin has had. Here's 2012, getting into the new year. 2012 basically ends like right where this is written. But anyways, you get into the end of the year, you get that rally and the parabolic run into the post-halving year, which for us will be 2025. But before then, you start getting that excitement. Remember, Q4 we always see Bitcoin rally, and I think we are setting up for that this time around too, with Mt. Gox selling nearly over, with this beautiful consolidation phase we had. If it wasn't for this consolidation phase, I might be a little hesitant to believe that Q4 will see a rally, but I do believe we're setting up very nicely for an end of year rally. Look at 2016 halving. Once we get into 2017, we get that parabolic run. Once you break the previous all-time highs, Bitcoin doesn't look back. It goes on to rally and do what it has done every cycle. Here's 2020, and here's a very similar chart setup what we had in this cycle. This kind of a chop, this sideways pattern, this slight downtrend, people saying, oh, we're downtrending. But Bitcoin basically, once we got into 2021, it went parabolic. And even to the end of the year, this is October of 2020 when we really ran and break out of this pattern. Look at right here. We're approaching September and October. We are kind of in this consolidation phase, this slight pullback, like similar to what we saw in 2020. And we should hit that phase where we break out, break new all-time highs, and then go parabolic in 2025. Now, there are a couple of things I'm watching with Bitcoin. Recently, we did break out of this pattern we were in. That was a really nice breakout. The market definitely reacted to this pattern. What we're doing now is we got a bit of a bull flag going, the sideways action. If we break down under, I would say probably 63.7, that might bring us lower to retest these previous highs as a support. Flip this resistance as a support. Otherwise, I think a break of the psychological 65 would bring us to test our previous high here first, this 69. And then break that, and we're going to test our other highs, and then breaking all-time high, getting into the 80,000s perhaps by the end of the year. I know I called for an 80K Bitcoin by August, I was wrong. I do think 80,000 by the end of the year is relatively reasonable. And who knows, maybe it surpasses that. Based on past cycles, we probably will. Another positive is, there's a negative. We did get a death cross, but it was quickly bought back up, and we are now above the 50 and the 200 MA, and they are both pointing up, which is fantastic. This will be the last golden cross we see potentially until 2026, maybe 2027. I thought that about this golden cross back here, but we did get that short-term flip of the golden cross, that short death cross, that slight knee-jerk reaction, the market seeing the death cross coming and selling off, and it was just a fake out, it looks like, and we are going on to work on our next leg up. That's the thing with these golden crosses and death crosses, is they are lagging indicators. Sometimes they're a sign of a bigger, larger trend starting, sometimes they're not. I do think the next death cross we get will probably be one to worry about, and it will probably come at some point in the end of 2025, if not 2026. To me, above all else, the 4-year cycle is key, and we are in the parabolic stage. This is not the time to be feared out. This is not the time to sell, in my opinion. And these are the last chances to buy, actually, in my opinion. I would not recommend buying a Bitcoin above 100K, above 150K, as we're getting into late 2025 potentially. That is the time to be extremely cautious. In Ethereum, we have quite a different chart setup. We did get our death cross here, and we have it's definitely more of a rough sell-off with Ethereum. I mean, it is an altcoin. It is going to get pushed around quite considerably more. One positive, it does look like we are breaking this kind of a trend we were stuck in. This was a previous resistance level that has flipped as a support. You see the retest as support. Perhaps we start utilizing this as a support again and break out, work on our previous descending resistance here. Next up for ETH, I believe, is a break of the psychological 3000 along with the 50 MA, and then it can go on to work on its 200 MA and a break of this descending resistance. I'll make a prediction right now that by the end of the year, Ethereum will hit new all-time highs. Call me crazy, call me what you will, but I think we will see Ethereum very, very close to 5,000, if not above, by the end of this year. Where was Bitcoin when the ETFs were launched? Bitcoin was like right here. We got the launch and we got that initial sell-off, that initial fear, going from 49, nearly 49, basically 49, all the way down to 38.5. And then we got our parabolic run all the way to 75,000. Look at this. This is right around when the ETFs went live. We did see an initial sell-off, a little bit of fear. Perhaps this is just like with Bitcoin, where we go on that parabolic rally and we create new all-time highs like Bitcoin did. Remember, it plays out like a buy the rumor, sell the news event at first. People sell off. Wall Street then gets in and gets to buy in at a lower price and then push it up. Retail pops in at last second towards those new all-time highs and gets left holding the bag. Just like what happened with Bitcoin at 75K. People were probably piling in at that point, and Wall Street wanted to tank it down from there so they can reaccumulate lower and then send it on its next run once retail panic sells. But let me know if there's anything I missed coming up next week. I know Nvda is going to be huge. We have a lot of inflation data coming up over the next few weeks. Hopefully it comes in at least as expected, if not seeing it come in lower than the previous month. We definitely don't need inflation ticking up as the Fed is approaching rate cuts. But let me know what you think about Bitcoin. Are we going to see an end of year rally like we have every cycle, every halving year? And what do you think is going to happen with Ethereum? Is it going to do what Bitcoin did with the spot ETFs? An initial sell-off and then a run to new all-time highs. Things can change a lot in a matter of a few days, a few weeks. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed your weekend, and I will see you tomorrow.